I was sitting here just thinking on how things have changed and how even though everything hasn't taken place, I can see that my life is in the middle of a transformation. Then God said to me, a Cinderella story. When God said a Cinderella story, I immediately remembered watching Cinderella as a child. And it's just so funny how certain things that God uses were profound moments or things in my life at a time when I was just completely unaware of God or even what was going on. I remember the feeling that I used to get seeing Cinderella go from a maid to a princess. I don't fully remember the movie. I don't even fully remember the storyline. As I was looking different things up on Google, I ran across some things that stuck out to me. It says Cinderella is working as a maid in her own home. When I read that Cinderella was working as a maid in her own home, then it reminded me of when I would watch the movies and how I felt seeing how her stepmother and her stepsisters treated her. I remember thinking how cruel they were, especially given the circumstance. Cinderella's dad had passed away. She was already dealing with enough, and then they turn around and they make her a maid in her own house, a servant. The people who this word is for, you have been a servant in your own household, willingly or unwillingly. Even though it seems like you may have been mistreated growing up, or even though it may seem like you are mistreated by your family presently, God is saying you weren't placed there by mistake. You were placed there to be a servant. You were placed there to be an example. Another thing that God has been highlighting to me, and even more so once he gave me this word, is rejection. And as I thought back on the story of Cinderella, I thought, if anything, Cinderella felt rejected. She was rejected by the people who were supposed to care for her. She was rejected by the people who were so-called her family. She was rejected for seemingly no reason at all. And then it goes on to say that it wasn't until Cinderella met her Prince Charming that she became a princess or had that transformation into a bride. And when I read that, God spoke to me and said, you are going to have a you and God moment. Meaning, at a certain point of time, you are going to be confronted with the goodness of God. You are going to meet face to face with the goodness, with the glory of God. And in that moment, you have no choice but to be transformed. You have no choice but to become greater. You have no choice but to be transfigured. Cinderella went from walking around in rags, walking around cleaning up after people, walking around taking care of people, walking around slaving for people, and not getting any pay, not getting any respect, not getting anything in return, to becoming a princess, becoming a bride. God removed her as a servant and placed her in royalty. She didn't have to go through a long preparation. She didn't have to put a whole bunch of thinking into it. In an instant, she was transformed. And with that, God is saying, overnight success. Your overnight success is here. You're not going to have to toil for what it is that God is about to do. In an instant, you're going to be transformed. In an instant, you are going to go from this to that. In an instant, you're going to go from having no children to with child. In an instant, you're going to go from sickly to healed. In an instant, you're going to go from facing legal troubles to being free, and free indeed. God is about to do a complete 180, a complete turnaround. This is bigger than a renewal. This is a complete restoration. I know you've driven by a fast food place or an old restaurant and see that where once stood that building is nothing. It's completely leveled out. And there's a sign that says that the building is being reconstructed. Or they'll say something on the sign implying that they removed this to replace it with something better. As to say, I know it looks like this isn't happening. I know from what you see right now, it looks dead. But once this thing is rebuilt, it's going to be better than ever. Once this thing is rebuilt, it's going to be better than before. And this is not a message only for women. This is for women and men. Your testimony is a Cinderella story. What you've experienced compared to where God is taking you is going to be a testimony to the miraculous works of his hands.